Hello dear students. Do you know after stopping of heartbeat, still the tissues are supplied with oxygen for how many minutes? Yeah. Know the answer for this question at the end of this video lesson. So let's jump into our topic, transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. If you are new to my lesson, then like, share and subscribe so that you are notified every time I post a new lesson. Today we are going to learn about transport of oxygen. Transport of oxygen occurs by two methods. One by plasma and the second one is by RBC. By plasma, only 3% of oxygen is transported in the dissolved state. By RBC, 97% of oxygen is transported through RBC. So RBC means red blood corpuscles, which contains iron containing pigment hemoglobin. So that hemoglobin transports 97% of oxygen. So each hemoglobin molecule contains 4 polypeptide chains, 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains. Each polypeptide chain is loaded with one oxygen molecule. Hemoglobin, 4 polypeptide chains of hemoglobin are attached with 4 oxygens, then it is known as a saturated hemoglobin. So hemoglobin combines with oxygen, forms oxyhemoglobin. Combines with 4 oxygen molecules and forms oxyhemoglobin. So here 4 oxygen molecules combines with the hemoglobin and forms oxyhemoglobin. So 100 ml of blood carries 5 ml of oxygen. So 1 gram of hemoglobin transports approximately 1.34 grams of oxygen. So oxygen, the carrying capacity of hemoglobin, oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin depends upon numerous factors like partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, temperature, hydrogen ion concentration, etc. So to know about the affinity of oxygen towards hemoglobin, one curve or a graph is very helpful, and that is oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. So this curve is obtained by plotting the values of partial pressure of oxygen on the x-axis and percent saturation of hemoglobin on y-axis. So after plotting these values, we get a S-shaped or a sigma-shaped curve, which is known as oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. So this is the sigmoid curve. So this curve, so we are interested in the partial pressure of oxygen, 3 partial pressure of oxygen. That is partial pressure of oxygen 20 mmHg, partial pressure of oxygen at 40 mmHg, and partial pressure of oxygen at 95 mmHg and above. So 20 mm of partial pressure of oxygen occurs in the active muscles. When we are doing exercise, the muscles, in the muscles, partial pressure of oxygen is only 20. At that time, 35% of blood is saturated. Only 35%. Remaining oxygen is unloaded to the tissues, active tissue, that is the muscle. And at 40 mmHg, which occurs at deoxygenated blood or at tissue levels, the blood is 70 to 75% saturated. That means 70 to 75% of hemoglobin is combined with the oxygen. So even at tissue levels, not all the oxygen is unloaded. It is unloaded only 22% of oxygen, and 70 to 75% of oxygen remains in the deoxygenated blood. That's why even after stopping of heart, the tissues are supplied with this oxygen for 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the answer for the question we asked during introduction. So do you understand? So that's why even after stopping of heartbeat, oxygen is supplied to the tissues, as deoxygenated blood contains 70 to 75% of oxygen during normal conditions. So next, at alveolar level, the partial pressure of oxygen is very high. That alveolar level is 104. Oxygenated blood is 95 mmHg. At 95 mmHg, the partial pressure of oxygen, only 97% of hemoglobin is saturated. Here, after 97% saturation, the graph becomes flattened. So the graph doesn't increase further, it becomes flattened. Even though the partial pressure increases 100, 104, 110, even though the partial pressure increases, but the percent saturation of hemoglobin is 97. From 95 mmHg onwards, the percent saturation of hemoglobin is only 97. This you have to remember. So this is the right side of the graph and this is the left side of the graph. So here the hemoglobin dissociation means to break down. So here the oxyhemoglobin, when the partial pressure of carbon dioxide or H plus ion concentration or temperature increases, then the backward direction, that is oxyhemoglobin undergoes backward direction and it dissociates into hemoglobin and oxygen. So where this occurs means it occurs at tissue levels. At tissue levels, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is more and the partial pressure of oxygen is less. Likewise, the temperature and hydrogen ion concentration and 2,3 BPG. 2,3 BPG means 2,3 biphosphoglyceric acid. So this is present in pregnant women at placenta. So this is not present in normal women. It is present only in the pregnant women at the placental level. So this is also useful to dissociation of oxygen at the placental level so that oxygen is available for the fetus. So it is asked in NEET examinations, 2,3 BPG. So for that, even though it is not present in your textbook, I am referring this one. So the effect of partial pressure of carbon dioxide, temperature and H plus ions concentration on oxygen affinity of hemoglobin is known as Bohr effect. This is also very important for your intermediate exam and also for NEET and all other competitive exams. What is Bohr effect? Bohr effect is nothing but the effect of partial pressure of carbon dioxide and H plus ion concentration on the affinity of oxygen towards hemoglobin is known as Bohr effect. So if at tissue levels these factors are very high, so the oxygen is dissociated and supplies to the tissues so that the curve moves towards the right direction. So this curve moves towards the right direction. This occurs at the tissue level. At alveolar level, where the oxygen partial pressure is very high and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low and temperature is also low and hydrogen ion concentration is also low and 2,3 BPG is also very low. In that condition, in that situation, pH value is inversely proportional to H plus ions concentration. H plus ions concentration is high, then the pH value is low. If the pH value is high, H plus ions concentration is low. So during these conditions, the graph or the curve moves towards the left side. So it moves towards her. So oxygen association is increased. Oxyhemoglobin formation is increased under these conditions. Oxygen dissociation is increased under these conditions. So this is about the Bohr effect. So you have to remember these factors. At tissue levels, you are already know during the exchange of gases, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide are very high at tissue levels, low at alveolar level. So this is about oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. We will meet in another lesson. Until then, happy studying.